Thank you for being here at Binghamton University and the Institute for Genocide and Mass Atrocity Prevention. I'm wondering if you could start off by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Joseph Sebarenzi. I am from Rwanda. So I was born in Rwanda, grew up in Rwanda. I also spent time in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where I did my high school and college. I spent time in Burundi. I lived in Canada, and I have been in the US since 2000. And before that, I worked in non-profit organizations in the Great Lakes region of Africa, and I also served in the Parliament of Rwanda.
Great. And the message that you've been sharing with students and faculty while you've been here at Binghamton University has been about the importance of forgiveness.
Yes.
And at the Institute, we're really focused on how can we prevent future atrocities.
Yes.
And could you talk a little bit about how you see forgiveness being a tool for prevention?
I think forgiveness is a great tool. It's a great tool because it's something you do, and an individual can do without involving any other party in the conflict. As you know, after conflict, we want reconciliation, but reconciliation requires two parties, and those two parties have to agree on embarking on that process. When it doesn't happen, individuals have the power to start that process of forgiveness, which can help actually in the larger process of reconciliation. I don't know if that's...
Maybe you could explain what you mean by forgiveness.
Yes. Maybe I should start by saying what forgiveness is not.
Okay. So,
unlike what people think, forgiveness is not the denial of justice. You can still require the offender to account for what happened, repair what was broken to the extent it's possible. So justice must be there. So it's not denial of justice. Second, it's not that you forget. You don't forget. I cannot forget that my mother, my father were killed in the genocide. I will never forget that my 7 brothers and sisters were killed in the genocide, or many other relatives and others. I will never forget that. So you don't forget. It's not like forgive and forget. No, it doesn't happen that way. Also, forgiveness is not, it's not something you do as a response to an apology. So it doesn't depend on someone else to apologize to you, or someone else to say, okay, I'm ready for reconciliation. No. So forgiveness is basically a decision you take, you alone, to move on, because you cannot change what has happened, to move on as a healing strategy. Because if you don't forgive, it means you keep that anger, that bitterness. If that happened to me, I had that anger, that bitterness, until I understood that I was suffering from the consequences. Then I understood that I should start that process of forgiveness, basically to free myself from anger and bitterness. And when you do that, it also helps you to see the other person, including the offender, to see them as brothers and sisters, as people who did wrong, but people who may change. So if you treat them kindly, there is a chance that that kindness may change them. But if you take revenge against them or against their loved one, then you are making that cycle of violence to go on. Yeah.
And do you see this forgiveness as primarily a tool in a post-atrocity context, or could it be used in a country, in a community that has never experienced mass violence?
Yeah, it's both. Forgiveness is a tool that individuals can use at interpersonal level, interpersonal conflict in family, in a workplace, but it can also be used after mass violence. So talking about mass violence, government generally encourage individuals to disclose the wrong they did. And at the same time, they also encourage victims to forgive as a way of moving forward and making sure what happened, it does not happen again. But what happens is that in many countries, and based on who we are as individuals, as people tend not to admit their wrongdoing. They tend to deny. So when you know someone did wrong to you, but they continue to deny, then what choice do you have? The choice is not to take revenge. The choice will be forgiveness. And forgiveness does not work alone. So forgiveness, as I said, it helps reconciliation, because forgiveness goes with being who you are, kind, respectful to others. So when you have that set of behavior toward others, toward your enemy, there is a chance that the enemy may be changed by your behavior. And over time, they may say, oh, this person is no longer enemy, and we can work together. So it's possible. But forgiveness is first and foremost about your health. How do you manage that crisis? How do you keep yourself healthy and productive? Because anger and bitterness has consequences on your health. So by freeing yourself from it through reconciliation, through forgiveness, you are more productive, you can go on with your life, you are a productive member of the community, and you grow, you raise your kids in a kind way. So instead of stealing into the hatred, instead you are instilling into them these positive values that help create peace in any society.
So as you're talking about this forgiveness, it is something that has to be genuine from the individual, not part of a formal truth and reconciliation process, which says if this person apologizes, you need to forgive them. But are there things that governments can do to help people reach the point where they see the value of forgiveness and they get there on their own?
Yeah, government has a major role to do in reconciliation, in prevention, including forgiveness. So government create a condition for those values to flourish. If any government is against forgiveness, against reconciliation, prevention, then individuals don't have much power to do something, even though they can still do it. Because forgiveness is something that does not require anyone else to help doing it. It's something you can do on your own. And when I do it, you do it, more people do it, then it can be like a movement that reaches so many people, and those acts of kindness together can create new condition for peace.
Do you have examples in mind of where you think communities or groups of people or entire countries have done a good job of promoting widespread forgiveness, and other examples where it really isn't present?
There are not many examples, but talking about a government, really government that talked about forgiveness, I think we can talk about South Africa. South Africa went through apartheid for many decades, but eventually the two parties in the conflict, the white and the black, came together to talk about what happened and how they can have a smooth transition to an inclusive government. And they also did discuss about accountability. And so they had accountability together with forgiveness. And the idea was anyone who was involved in a crime during that time is eligible for amnesty, provided they disclose every crime they committed, how they committed it, and if they apply for amnesty. So that was really accountability. And on the other side, individuals who did that, they had amnesty or forgiveness as incentive. And it happened. So South Africa was able to have that smooth transition to democracy, smooth transition to an inclusive government. And today, South Africa is peaceful. It doesn't mean that every individual in their hearts are healed, but at least the government set a tone of coming forward and disclose the evil done, and on the other side, encourage people to forgive. And so it did happen. It happened and it was very helpful. Now South Africa is stable. Some individuals did it genuinely, and today white and black South African, they live together, relatively in peace. Yeah.
So many things that governments do in a post-atrocity context can be done well and promote prevention, or they can be done poorly and probably contribute to recurrence of violence. And one of the things we often talk about in a post-conflict setting are commemorations or memorials or some way of remembering what happened. What are the characteristics of memorialization or commemoration that can contribute to forgiveness? And what do you watch out for that would be problematic and might make it harder for people to reach the point of forgiveness?
It can make forgiveness harder, broadly make reconciliation harder if commemoration is kind of partisan or one-sided. In the context of Rwanda, we have a commemoration, we have a museum, basically to talk about the genocide of Tutsi in 1994. But the way it's done, it probably does not help in reconciliation because it only it's about remembrance of one segment of the population, and the other segment of the population has no way of remembering their loved ones or having a monument about their loved one died. So when you have a situation like that, it may seem okay, fine, because people are afraid, but deep inside, they feel very bad because there is no acknowledgement of their suffering. So that's problematic. So the best way to do it is really to find ways to remember, ways to have a monument, if that can contribute to reconciliation. So basically, in a post-conflict, we should avoid doing anything if it's proven that it's a hindrance to reconciliation. So if monument, remembrance are a hindrance, then we should give up or at least find a way to do it in a more inclusive way. In Rwanda, for instance, it's possible that we can take a week talking about past human rights violations that took place in Rwanda. Human rights in terms of genocide against Tutsi, human rights in terms of other crimes committed against Hutu, because that also happened. So talk about all that happened, have a monument that for everyone, and focus on the value of human rights, the value of living together as brothers and sisters, and encouraging people to understand that what happened in the past, we can blame that. We can blame individuals who did that, but we should blame more the political context, politics of the time, and then try to help people to use that week, if it's a week or a few days, to discuss those issues, including the issues on what can be done so that what happened, it doesn't happen again. So in that way, what you are doing is something inclusive. It's something that creates space for everyone. It's something that allow people to bring in their input in terms of why it happened and what can be done so it doesn't happen tomorrow or after tomorrow and to future generations.
In your book, God Sleeps in Rwanda, you document this journey, your personal story, and this journey to recognizing the value of forgiveness and reaching that point where you were able to forgive.
Yeah.
How much was the book for you simply documenting that and sharing it, or was it part of the process of realizing the value of forgiveness?
Actually, when I decided to write that book, I think the intent was to share my views about what happened. It was more that than healing. But in the process of doing research for that book, I learned so much, and it was a healing process because I was able to go back in history and understand the relations between Hutu and Tutsi and understand what went wrong. I was able to also, of course, look at the suffering of Tutsi during the genocide, but at the same time, also discover the suffering of Hutu during the war and during the genocide. So it helped me to have more empathy and realizing that what happened in Rwanda, it's because of our history during colonization. It was because of bad politics we had. It was this war that was going on for 4 years. So it was a combination of factors that made possible the genocide. If we didn't have those factors, Rwandans would not have killed their loved ones. So what we need to do is really to identify issues before a conflict erupts. So this early warning mechanism is something that should be developed so that we do it because it's less expensive when you prevent. Because once there is a crisis, not only you lose people, and you make it harder to bring those people to live together again, and then you have the international community step in with humanitarian assistance. So it's very expensive when in fact people can detect those issues ahead of time, work on them, address them, and allow people basically to live in peace with each other.
When you talk with people all around the country, all around the world, you talk with other people from Rwanda, I'm sure, other people from post-conflict, post-genocidal societies elsewhere in the world, as well as people, for example, on university campuses across the United States who only know about genocide through books, through what they read or perhaps what they've seen on television or movies. What's been the most rewarding part of those interactions that you have with very different groups of people as you talk about your own journey, as you talk about your book, as you talk about forgiveness?
Yeah, what I learned, of course, I learned so much from those talks. When people ask me questions I never thought about, so it helps me go back and dig and know more about conflict, the causes of conflict, how to resolve conflict. And also it helps me to know more people who have also suffered, because the genocide took place in Rwanda, but there are many other genocides. Some were recognized as genocide. There were others who were never recognized. So people come to me and they say, my family went through this, So it really helps me to have that broad kind of knowledge, knowing that it was not just in Rwanda, it wasn't just me, but there are so many other people out there who have suffered. And so when I come in and I share my views about forgiveness and reconciliation, and I feel that my message is helping someone, I feel very happy. Particularly when I tell people, my journey toward forgiveness, it was a journey. It wasn't something one day or a few months. It was a long journey. It's something you nurture over time until it becomes part of your life. And I tell people that what really keeps me on that path of forgiveness and reconciliation, it's this idea that it helps in terms of peace for future generations. Because if you don't forgive, you could engage in revenge, and if you do, it means that cycle of violence will go from your generation to the next generation and to other generation. And it happened in Rwanda, because the crisis in Rwanda went from my grandmother's generation to my mother's generation to my wife's generation. So it has to stop somewhere. It will stop only when we show really compassion for future generations and say, you know what, we need to make this sacrifice and extend our hand to our enemies. Be good to them, talk with them, work with them, so that what happened to us, it doesn't happen to the next generation. So that's one that really keeps me going. What keeps me going, of course, is about my health. You have anger, you have a bitterness, it will affect your health. It weakens your immune system. If that happens, you'll be sick, you can die. That is really a motivation that keeps me going. And of course, the other motivation is about our faith. There are many faiths in the world, whether Judaism, Christianity, Islam, they all teach forgiveness, not revenge. They teach reconciliation, not retaliation. So if we are honest with our religions, our beliefs, we should really live by those values. And because I made that commitment to live the values of my faith, Christianity, then doing otherwise, it will be cheating. So all of that together, it helps me to keep going, spread this message, hoping that more individuals can discover that forgiveness is first and foremost in their interest, the interest of their community, their families, their nation, and the world. Yes.
So Dr. Sebarenzi, let me ask you just one more question. What would be your advice to the Institute here at Binghamton University, keeping in mind that given that we're at a university, our two primary roles are in education and academic programs and in research and scholarship. What would you like to see an institute like this one do to contribute to atrocity prevention?
I think what you do already is really good. So you can build on that. And I like this idea of encouraging professors incorporating in their courses, their different courses, some lenses of conflict prevention, because we need conflict prevention. So if more professors can do that in their courses, and if you can go even beyond the Binghamton University and reach more schools within New York and within the US, that would be good, because there is an issue I think we have is we expect our children or young people to know how to manage conflict without giving them the skills. We expect them to be kind with one another when in fact we never teach them that. So if we have resources to teach geography, history, math, we should include something about how to manage conflict, how to be kind with one another, and what are the benefits. Forgiveness, what are the benefits to you and to the community. So having that type of education, which I call peace education, and they have it in this university, have it in more schools, that can be interesting. Another aspect, of course, is to find ways to bring together practitioners from different fields, from different organizations, so that they have a platform or a way of getting together and exchange experience, so that people can know, okay, we can learn from this group what they do so that we can improve what we are doing, and also discuss common projects and discuss common goals, because there are people working on conflict prevention in the US, in other countries in Africa, in Europe. So basically we have the same vision, so around that vision, we can have 2 or 3 missions we can assign to each organization and find a way to work together toward that common vision of a world with less conflict. Because we should say it, we spend too much on the consequences of conflict. The reason we spend too much on the military, in every country in the world, we spend too much on the military because there are conflict. We do it to protect ourselves, to protect our people. But if people were educated enough and were peaceful in their behavior, we wouldn't need so much military. Of course, we need it, but not so much. We will not need so much in terms of the number of police, and so we won't need so much in terms of prisons all over the country. And we could use those resources to fund social economic program that will make our well-being go up and up.
Great. Thank you so much. It was
You're
really
welcome.
a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.